Today I'm going to take you through a side-lying Pilates sequence, which is going to help strengthen your glutes. In particular, it's going to help strengthen your glute medius. This is one of the muscles that helps stabilize your pelvis. And we want a nice stable pelvis when we move so that it reduces the impact going either up to our lower back or down to our hips, knees, feet and ankles. So basically, nice strong hip stability muscles is going to help you reduce the risk of injury. So I'm going to take you through the sequence. So we're going to lie on our right side. Your knees are bent, your feet are in line with your bum is in line with your spine. So you're in a nice straight line from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. Let's bend this elbow, pop the hand under the head. This hand's going on top of the hip bone over hip bone, so our pelvis is nice and aligned, knee in line with knee. And just gently engage the core, tummy back to spine, close the ribs. So we're going to start with our clamshells. So 12 clamshells, the feet stay together and down, and you open that top knee and close it back. Breathe out as you open, gently engage the core to help you keep the pelvis nice and stable. Breathe in to close. And 3. And 4. So as we open that knee, you're feeling that kind of wrapping out, that external rotation at that hip, like the hips rotating. And 6. Pelvis stays really nice and still, guys. So I don't want to see this happening. I don't want to see your pelvis rocking back. So you keep hip bone over hip bone, so the pelvis stays nice and stable. And last 2. Last 1. We're going to go straight into our second clam variation. So you lift both your feet up, the feet stay glued together, underneath thighs on the mat still, knees are together. Breathe out, open that top knee again. And we've got 12 clamshells here with our feet elevated. So same as you were just doing before. 2. Pelvis stays nice and still, nice and level. Gently engage the core. 3. And those feet stay lifted, and you're feeling that wrapping out in this top thigh here in the hip joint. Gently squeezing those glutes, gently squeeze those butt cheeks. Opening the knees as wide as you can so you get this nice kind of big diamond shape between the knees. The most important thing is that your pelvis stays really still, no movement in your pelvis. And 7. I'm going to go for 12 reps again. And 8. And 10. Last 2 there. Last 1. Knee closest to knee, feet lower down. Now we're going to keep that underneath knee and leg on the mat. You're going to lift your top leg up, keeping it bent, and then we're going to rotate in and out. So we're going to work on internal and external rotation at the hip joint. You're going to turn the thigh bone in your hip joint and tap your knee towards your knee that's on the mat. And then rotate that leg back out into that turn out and tap your toe to your toe or your foot to your foot. Both knees are still bent, guys. You're just rotating your top thigh bone inwards and outwards in your hip joint. So if you think about your hip joint, that ball and socket joint, you're getting that really lovely internal rotation and then back into that external rotation. 3, we're going to go for another 12 reps. And 4, hand on the hip, so you know you're keeping your hip nice and still. And again, no movement creeping into that pelvis. You're going to keep your pelvis really stable. So you need that little bit of core engagement. Draw the tummy back to the spine, the navel back to the spine, close the ribs. You need that to help you keep the pelvis still. And then we're just rotating the thigh bone in the hip joint. And it's really going to work those hip muscles. You're probably feeling it by now, guys. You're probably feeling a little bit of an ache. That's good. Means it's working. I've lost count, I'm not going to lie. But you've got 12 reps here as well. Let's call that 10. Last 2. If you've been counting much better than me, make sure you do your 12 there. And last 1. Lower the foot to the foot, lower that knee down. So next exercise in this sequence, you're going to bring your underneath knee a little bit higher, so knee is in line with hip joint, and then keep this bend at the knee, so you've got that kind of 90-degree right angle. This top leg is going to straighten and lift, so fully straight leg in line with your spine. If you can't see that, look down your torso, leg should be an extension of your spine. Parallel leg, flex that top foot, hand on the hip, we're just going to lift that leg straight up and then back down to hip height. So it lifts above hip height, back to hip height. Keep the leg really parallel now, so we're not in that turnout, we're in parallel. Lift it above hip height, back to hip height. Really important here, guys, that you don't let the hip lift. So I don't want to see this happening. The waist would shorten. So think of the top waist here staying nice and long. Lift the leg only as high as you can before you feel this hip lifting up. And only let the leg lower back to hip height. So it's above hip height, back to hip height. Okay, you've got 12 reps here as well. So let's call this 6. Again, I've lost count. You guys are probably counting way better than me. 7. Breathing out and in, and out and in. Last 3 and 10. 11, the leg is staying completely in line with the spine and parallel. Last 1. Good. From there, you take that leg back to your hip height, keep it parallel, keep that foot flexed. We're going to swing the leg forward, keep that hip height. You go as far forward as you can. Ideally, the leg is in line with the hip, but without the pelvis tucking under. So you're keeping a neutral pelvis. You want to think of the sit bone still facing to the side of your wall there. And then the leg comes back through this position. You point the foot and the leg just goes a little bit behind you, so you feel that extension through your hip flexor, but again without losing your neutral pelvis. So don't stick your butt out and lose your neutral pelvis. Don't arch into that lower back. So it'll only go a little bit behind you, not very far, as far as you can without losing your neutral pelvis. So swinging the leg forward, flex the foot, take the leg just behind you, point the foot. Keep this hip height, guys. Don't let the leg drop down, hip height. Let's breathe in as we swing forward. Let's breathe out as we swing back with control. No movement whatsoever in your pelvis. That's the most important thing. The pelvis is staying neutral the whole time. And you've got 12 reps here. Let's call this 5. You're breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, guys. That's the Pilates breath. You're connecting your breath to your core. So when you breathe out, just draw your belly back towards your spine, or your navel back towards the back wall. Close your ribs. This is your powerhouse. This is your control. And it comes from your breath. And it's going to help you keep your pelvis nice and still and stable. And let's call this 10. Last 2. And then we finish this sequence by taking the leg back in line with the spine, still at that hip height. We're going to keep that foot pointed. I'm going to take little circles. So just small circles, forward, down, back and up. And you're going in an inward direction to start with. The leg is still parallel. It's almost just like you're painting a little circle with your toe in the air. So you go above, in front, below and behind your hip height. And again, most importantly is that there's no movement creeping into your pelvis. Your pelvis stays nice and still, nice and neutral. And just breathe through this one. Make sure that core's still engaged. Here's your control to keep that pelvis neutral and still and stable. And 9. And 10, last 2. And 11. 12, we go straight into the opposite direction, so outward direction. Don't worry if you started in the other direction, just make sure you swap into the opposite direction. 2 and 3. Keep your breath going. You can sync your breath to your movement if that feels good for you, or just let it flow. And 9. Last 2. Ooh, bend that knee lower down. Wow, give it a little rub. You should really feel it in that hip. You are going to do that whole sequence on the other side. Once you've finished your other side, I'll let you do your other side in your own time. You're going to give your glutes a really good stretch. So rolling back onto your back, bend those knees, pop one foot over the other thigh, interlock the hands behind the back of that thigh, lift that foot off the mat, draw towards you. You can push this knee open and hold your glute stretch there. It's probably going to feel quite tight after all of that work, so just breathe into it. And then make sure you stretch out your other glute as well after you've done both sides. Good. Enjoy that side lying sequence.